never really felt like I'm good at being Indian. So non-Indians hardly believe me when I say I'm Indian because I don't watch Bollywood movies or look like a beauty queen or whatever other expectations they have for Indians. But even amongst other Indians, I've always felt like a fraud, like since childhood. All of the other Indian doctor daughters that I grew up with outside of Chicago, they were just way better at Indianing than I was. They took Bharatanatyam classes. I took ballet. They all kept their hair long and straight. I chopped mine short and got a perm. They all wanted to be doctors. I wanted to be a doctor, but I really wanted to be a backup dancer for Janet Jackson. Gave up on being Indian and spent high school hanging out with white people and doing white people stuff, like playing golf and eating rice-a-roni every night for dinner. So it wasn't until, you all eat it, you know you do. So it wasn't until I went to Northwestern in 2002 that I finally met some other Indians that I felt like I could relate to. There was Farah, this fresh off the boat Muslim chick who was also a drunken floozy. Shaylee was like her typical science nerd, but by the weekend she turned into a pot-smoking hipster. And then there was Neil, this Indian guy I had a huge crush on because he was Indian, but not too Indian. So I felt like he would be the perfect compromise if my parents ever went full Indo and decided to arrange my marriage. So I ended up hanging out with them quite a bit. Now, about halfway through our freshman year, there was this huge all-Indian rager going down at the University of Illinois. And the three of them really wanted to go, but I had zero interest. The party just felt way too brown for my blood. But then I thought, maybe I should go. Like, maybe this is my chance to be a good Indian and like get drunk with a bunch of other Indians. So I borrowed my cousin's Jeep because it was a 3-hour drive away. And I borrowed her street-purchased fake ID because it was at a nightclub. And then we all road tripped down to U of I. Now, people weren't kidding when they called this thing a rager. Like, never have I seen so many Indians jammed into such a confined space. And like, I've been to India. So like, I mean it when I say this was really crowded. So we all got shit-faced at the club and then went back to our Best Western and just kept drinking until like 4 a.m. when we all finally passed out. Now, the next morning at 10 a.m., I had mandatory rehearsal with the dance company I was in. So I made everyone wake up at the butt crack of dawn so that we could get back up to school in time. So we piled into the Jeep at like 7 a.m. and I booked it down the highway. And then somewhere between Podunk and Hicktown, Illinois, I got pulled over. This is not the first time I had ever been pulled over for speeding, so I knew what to do and I was pretty calm about it. But when I opened my wallet to take out my ID, my fake ID was still sitting in the clear main pocket. So I quickly reached my hand across to grab my real ID, but the cop had already seen it and said, "What was that ID?" So then I launched into this elaborate story about how my cousin gave me her ID in case I needed to prove that I knew the owner of the car, and none of it made sense. So then the cop asked me if I had been drinking, and I said no, because I had been like 3.5 hours. But he didn't buy that either. So he took me out of the Jeep, put me in the passenger seat of his car, and gave me a breathalyzer test. Like I said, it had only been 3.5 hours since I stopped drinking, so I blew above a 0. But even though I blew below the legal limit, I was underage. 0 tolerance, automatic DUI. So at that point, I just started bawling. I was sitting in a cop car. I had no idea what was going to happen to me. The cop was still rifling through my wallet for some reason. And when he found my student ID, he said, "What are you studying at Northwestern?" And I was like, "I'm pregnant!" And he goes, "Well, how do you expect to get into medical school with a felony on your record?" Apparently, possession of a fake ID is a felony. Yeah. I was about to become a felon. A felon and a non-doctor, which literally the poster image for how to be a bad Indian. He took me out the passenger seat of his car, turned me around and slapped handcuffs on my wrists. He drove me to headquarters. He took my fingerprints. He sat me in an interrogation room where he continued to intimidate me and grill me about this fake ID. Where did you get it? How long have you had it? Are you aware that fake IDs like this are what the bombers from 9/11 had? And in my head, I was just like, I'm sorry, I just wanted to get drunk with a bunch of brown people and like maybe hook up with Neil finally. But no matter how much I begged and pleaded with this cop, he didn't give a shit. He called my cousin and interrogated her about the ID, and he told my parents and their lawyer that I had committed a serious crime and was going to be punished accordingly. Eventually, he left me alone in the room to do who knows what. Arrest my friends, check the jail cell availability, I had no idea. I didn't know why my commonly perpetrated crime was such a big deal to him. I didn't know why he wasn't satisfied enough by the lesson he had scared into me. All I did know was that my future rested in his merciless hands. And all I could do was sit there and sob and prepare for jail. About 20 minutes later, he came back with a deal. He wouldn't charge me with a DUI or a felony as long as within 30 days I gave him the name and address of the person who made the ID. I didn't ask for details. I just took the piece of paper he wrote his information on, said okay, and ran. I found my friends waiting for me outside in the Jeep. I hugged them with relief and curled up in the safety of the back seat as Neil drove us back to school. I finally made it to my rehearsal, and when I told the mostly white company what had happened to me, the general consensus from them was that the cop was racist, that he was on some power trip patriotic mission to right the wrongs of 9/11, that if I were white, he would have only seen me as an innocent kid who wanted to drink and not as some potential accomplice to the Taliban. You guys, not once did it cross my mind that I was being racially profiled. That is how bad I am at being Indian. I needed white people to remind me of that. To remind me that regardless of how good or bad I think I am at being Indian, I still am Indian. That is an undeniable fact of my existence. I mean, I literally just took a DNA test and I'm 100% that brown. So I can at least rest assured that no matter what I do, what parties I go to, what sport I play, what I wear, what I eat, what I do with my hair, it is not a crime for me to call myself Indian, because that is a real ID and not a fake one. Thank you.